The K9 stood frozen, muzzle twitching, ears pointed toward the alley wall like it had heard something no one else could. Then it bolted. Baxter, no! The leash snapped taut in the veteran's trembling hands, jerking his entire body forward. His fingers were numb from the cold, but that wasn't what made them shake, it was the sound. That strange low hum like a heartbeat echoing off the brick. No car engines, no footsteps, just that pulse. Baxter crashed through a rusted gate, paws slapping through dirty slush as he charged into the darkness. The veteran followed blindly, lungs burning, vision swimming, heart pounding with a panic he hadn't felt since Fallujah. The alley twisted behind dumpsters and broken pallets, and when he rounded the corner, he froze. Baxter stood perfectly still, chest heaving, facing a boarded-up door. His tail didn't wag. He didn't sniff. He just stared at it, head tilted. There was no movement, no sound, just the rotting scent of wood and something older underneath. "Baxter," the man whispered. "You okay, boy?" The dog didn't move. Then slowly the door creaked open, and standing there was a man. Only he looked just like him, same eyes, same boots, same tattered Marine Corps jacket with the rip over the heart. But he wasn't real. He couldn't be. The veteran stumbled backward. Baxter didn't bark. He sat, calm, like he'd been waiting for this. The stranger in the doorway raised a hand, not to wave, but to beckon. That's when the veteran realized the face wasn't his reflection. It was someone he'd buried over 10 years ago. And Baxter? Baxter wasn't leading him to food or safety. He was leading him back to a secret they'd both sworn to take to the grave. He hadn't gone by his real name in years. People on the street just called him Cap. Some guessed it meant Captain. Others thought it was a joke, short for Captain Crazy after they saw him flinch at the sound of a siren or mumble into the dark when he thought no one was watching. But Baxter knew the truth. The K9 never looked at him like he was broken. To the dog, he was still someone worth following. 6 years ago, Captain Elias Monroe was the man everyone followed into fire. Literally. Marines respected him. Command trusted him. He walked like a man with purpose and barked orders like thunder. But war doesn't leave quietly. It rips things from you while you're still standing. His unit had been ambushed outside a village, west of Kabul. The blast tore through the convoy, flipping the lead Humvee into a ditch. Elias remembered the fire, the screaming, but not the sound. It was like the whole world had muted itself while his life burned around him. He crawled to the wreckage anyway. He pulled out 3 men, burned his arms to the bone. He didn't stop, until Baxter, his K9 partner, bit his leg to drag him away from the flames, Medal of Honor. Ceremony, applause, but then silence. His wife left 6 months later, said he wasn't the man she married. She was right. The man she married didn't. Wake up choking on air. The man she married didn't walk out of the house barefoot at 3 a.m. because he thought he heard mortar fire. The pension got delayed. Paperwork. Always paperwork. Then the eviction notice came. He packed 1 bag and clipped Baxter's vest around his chest. They never looked back. Now Elias lived under bridges and behind liquor stores. The world passed by without glancing twice. Just another homeless guy with a dog. But he didn't care what they saw. He still woke up every day because of one thing, Baxter. The dog had changed too. He didn't bark much anymore, just observed, followed Elias everywhere, never straying more than a foot away. And sometimes, in the early morning fog, Elias could swear Baxter looked at him like he knew something Elias didn't, like the dog was waiting for something. And tonight was different. It wasn't just the strange hum behind that alley door. It was Baxter's eyes. The dog wasn't afraid. He was alert, steady, like he'd brought Elias here on purpose. As he stepped forward, boots crunching against glass shards and ice, Elias felt that old flicker again, the one that used to rise in his chest before a mission. A strange blend of fear and certainty. But the battlefield was gone. So why did his hands remember the weight of a rifle? Why did Baxter's stillness feel exactly like it had right before their convoy was ambushed? And most of all, why did Elias feel like he was being led into something that had been waiting for him for a long time? Something buried, something not finished, something personal. He reached for the doorknob. It turned, unlocked. Baxter didn't move. Elias stepped. Inside. Inside, the building was eerily silent, thick with the scent of mildew, dust, and old paint. The air was heavy, like it hadn't been disturbed in years. Elias's boots echoed against the concrete floor. The flashlight on his phone trembled slightly in his grip, casting wild shadows on cracked walls and broken furniture. Baxter walked ahead slowly but deliberately, no hesitation, no confusion. Like he'd been here before. They moved through a narrow hallway past peeling posters that read, Veterans Crisis Resource Hub. Elias froze. That phrase twisted something deep in his memory, but it was buried. He reached out, fingers tracing the faded letters. This place was shut down years ago, he whispered. Baxter let out a quiet whine and nudged open a side door. Inside was a small office. The desk was covered in dust, but an envelope sat untouched in the center. No dust, no mold. Someone had placed it there, recently. Elias picked it up and read the name on the front. To Captain Elias Monroe. His throat tightened. Hands shaking, he opened it. Inside was a typed letter. The first line stopped his breath. If you're reading this, it means Baxter brought you home. Suddenly, he was back in the desert. Not physically, but completely immersed. In memory. Baxter digging frantically at loose gravel. Then something explosive buried just beneath the surface. Elias yelling. The world shattering in orange and white. But this wasn't just memory. It was too detailed, too recent, too vivid. Like someone had recorded his trauma and played it back. The letter continued. Project Sentinel was never about the dogs. It was about what they could help us recover, inside ourselves. He read on, jaw clenching. It detailed a classified program, an experimental trauma recovery mission. Dogs like Baxter weren't just trained to detect explosives. They were embedded, with behavioral responses, deep instincts to guide their partners, even long after war. They remember paths you've forgotten. They feel echoes you've buried. They can find doors inside your mind that you've locked shut. Elias blinked away tears. Was Baxter doing this on purpose, leading him back to heal, or was this something bigger? Twist number 1. Elias wasn't just a victim, he was a missing piece. He turned the letter over. The fire that day wasn't an accident. Someone inside your unit triggered it. The names were sealed. You were never supposed to find out. Elias's knees buckled. He remembered the moment, the fire, the screams, but never understood why it had happened so fast. Now he knew. Betrayal. The letter listed initials, JRMCLS, men he had trusted. One of them had caused it, and someone, maybe whoever wrote this letter, was trying to help him piece it all together. Baxter barked once, not a warning. A signal. They moved deeper into the building. Past shattered glass, a warped door leaned on broken hinges. On the other side, laughter. A child's laughter. Elias froze. Baxter pawed the door. Inside was a room, intact, warm, lit by an old lamp. Toys scattered the floor. On the wall, photos, military men smiling. One of them was Elias, and in the corner sat a young girl, no older than 8. She looked up, eyes wide. Uncle Eli, she whispered. His heart stopped. He hadn't heard that name since before the war. Only one person had ever called him that, his brother's daughter. But she was gone. After the fire, they moved. No contact. What is this? He muttered. Daddy said if you ever came back, I was supposed to wait here with Baxter. She held up a drawing. Elias and Baxter, standing in front of the Capitol building. It was dated 2 weeks ago. He stepped back. This wasn't possible. Elias's breath caught in his throat. He stared at the drawing, his name scribbled in a child's uneven handwriting beneath 2 figures, him and Baxter. They stood in front of the Capitol building, surrounded by what looked like a crowd of reporters. He looked up at the girl again. Your father? Who's your father? She tilted her head. Same as yours, Uncle Jay. The world tilted sideways. Jay, his brother, the one who vanished after the fire, presumed dead, no record, no trail. trail. "Where is he?" Elias demanded. But the girl just smiled sadly. "He said he had to go finish something. He told me to stay here. Said Baxter would know when it was time." The dog sat calmly beside her, tail thumping once. Elias scanned the room, this time noticing the details. Every photo had Jay's handwriting on the back, letters, newspaper clippings. One headline jumped out: "Private contractor whistleblower missing after accusing military of cover-up." Jay hadn't disappeared. He was taken. Emotional loop. The girl isn't who she seems. Elias crouched beside her. "How long have you been here?" She shrugged. "A while. I don't get hungry here." The room dimmed for a second. The warmth flickered like a projector reel stuttering. That's when it hit him. This wasn't real, not exactly. This room wasn't part of the building. It was part of him. Or more terrifying, part of Baxter. Something the dog had led him into. Something constructed, not just physically but psychologically. "Why are you showing me this?" Elias whispered. The girl looked him dead in the eyes. "Because you forgot who you are." Back in the hallway, the illusion crumbled. The walls cracked, light bulbs shattered above. Baxter barked and bolted forward, straight into a hidden stairwell Elias had missed earlier. Down they went. Spiral stairs, steep and slick with mold. The air turned colder. They emerged into a sub-basement, rows of crates, old file cabinets, dust-covered, monitors with smashed screens. Baxter walked directly to one cabinet, sat down, waited. Elias yanked it open. Inside, files. Hundreds of them, all labeled Sentinel subjects. He found his name, Jay's, even Baxter's, but the file that made his hands go cold: Operator 004, Elias Monroe. Psychological conditioning. Candidate cleared for controlled memory loop deployment. What the hell? They had done something to him, something he never consented to. False clue: Elias thinks he was a victim, until he finds the video one of the monitors sparked to life. Static, then an old security feed. A younger Elias sat in a sterile room, hands folded. A man across from him, black suit, voice distorted. "You understand the risks?" the man asked. Elias nodded on the screen. "If it helps end this war, I'll do it." The real Elias stumbled back. He had volunteered. The memory wasn't just suppressed. It had been scrubbed, rewritten, replaced. Baxter barked urgently. He wanted Elias to see one more thing. A final drawer inside, an envelope labeled "Only open when ready." Elias tore it open. Inside, a photo. Him, Jay, and Baxter, smiling, laughing. On the back, a single line in Jay's handwriting: "Don't forget what they made you forget." Loop flip. Baxter was never just a dog. He was a living key. Elias sat down hard on the floor. His head swam. He finally understood. Baxter wasn't just guiding him randomly. The dog had been trained to respond not just to scents or sounds, but to mental cues. Baxter had been with him through war, yes, but also through conditioning. He wasn't just a companion. He was a failsafe, and now he had unlocked the final door. Elias looked around the room one last time. Every file, every secret was meant to stay buried, but Baxter had led him here for a reason, not just to remember, to finish what Jay started. Elias stood in the silence of the basement, heart thudding. Dust settled around him as if time itself had paused. He looked again at the photo from the envelope. Jay's face full of life, Baxter's ears perked, his own smile wide and unburdened. He should have felt shattered, but he didn't. He felt clarity. For the first time in years, the noise in his head was quiet. Jay hadn't abandoned him. He'd tried to protect him, and Baxter, faithful Baxter, had never stopped trying to bring him back. Elias walked to the wall of files and pulled them down, one by one. As he read, a horrifying picture emerged. Covert experiments on memory suppression, dog handler neural synchronization programs, soldiers rewired for obedience and then discarded. He copied what he could. Snapped photos of documents, ripped out anything with his name or Jay's on it. Finally, he found a panel near the wall. Behind it, a control switch. Facility lockdown override. He flipped it. Somewhere above, gears shifted. Lights flickered. Locks disengaged. Elias exhaled and turned to Baxter. "We're done here." The dog wagged his tail once, gently. No bark. Just a nod, as if he understood this was the end of something dark. Together, they climbed the stairwell. The front doors, once sealed, now creaked open. Morning sunlight poured in. Elias blinked at the warmth, the sound of birds. Civilization wasn't far, a few rooftops in the distance. He turned and looked back at the decrepit building one last time. It looked ordinary from the outside, a forgotten shell of a structure hiding something monstrous. He reached down, ruffled Baxter's ears. "Let's go home." They walked. For the first time in a long time, Elias walked without fear. Weeks passed. Elias leaked the files anonymously. Then, when no one listened, he went public. National news picked up his story. He spoke in front of cameras. Journalists grilled him. Critics tried to discredit him, but the evidence was too solid, too thorough. And Baxter stood at his side like a monument of truth. They became symbols, a soldier and his dog, exposing a lie buried for over a decade. Eventually, Congress called for hearings. Documents were subpoenaed. Retired officials were brought in for questioning. A massive cover-up was slowly unraveled. Elias thought it was over. One night, Elias called Baxter. The dog didn't come. He found him in the hallway, standing. Still ears perked, eyes glassy. "Bax?" he whispered. No reaction. Then suddenly Baxter barked once. Loud, sharp. He turned and walked toward the garage. Elias followed, confused. The dog sat next to a storage locker. Elias hadn't opened that locker in years. He keyed it open. Inside, an old field pack. His brother's. Elias stared at it, hands trembling. He unzipped it. Inside was a small voice recorder. Dusty, untouched. He pressed play. Jay's voice came through. Calm, tired. "If you're hearing this, it means Baxter did his job. I hope you remember now. But you're not done, Eli. You were never the target. I was, and I think they're still watching." Silence. Then static. Then another voice, distorted, unrecognizable. Project Sentinel Phase 2. Reinstatement approved. New target acquired. Subject 004 reactivation in progress. The recording ended. Elias's blood ran cold. He turned slowly to Baxter. The dog was staring at him, expressionless, unblinking. And then he growled, low, guttural, as if something inside him had just switched back on. Elias backed up. No, they shut this down. We ended it. Baxter stepped forward, not aggressive, not calm either. Programmed. "Bax, it's me." The dog paused, and then his body trembled, torn between loyalty and something deeper, something programmed, buried. He lunged forward, not to attack, but to knock Elias down, to protect him. From behind, a red laser dot glowed on Elias's chest. He looked up. A sniper, in the distance. Too far to see clearly. Baxter stood over him, teeth bared, barking wildly. A shot rang out. The bullet hit something solid. Not flesh. Elias gasped, heart hammering. Baxter had thrown his body over him just in time. The bullet grazed the K9's vest, years old, worn but still holding. The dog whimpered, then turned toward the distant shooter, barking furiously. Elias rolled, scrambled to his feet, and yanked Baxter into cover behind his truck. "Hang on, boy, just hang on." But the sniper wasn't alone. Moments later, a black SUV skidded into view. Men in tactical gear stepped out, weapons drawn, silent, mechanical. Just like before. Elias's breath caught. They weren't soldiers. They were assets, the kind trained, not recruited, and that meant one thing. The program was never shut down. It just went deeper underground. Inside the garage, Fight or Die Elias sprinted toward the house, dragging Baxter with him. Gunfire erupted. Behind him, he slammed the garage door shut and locked it. His mind raced. There were no weapons left, just tools. Rusted, and one half-charged power drill, not enough. But Baxter, even injured, still growled, still stood. Why? Elias whispered. Why are they still after us? Then he remembered Jay's voice, on the tape. You were never the target, I was. Jay was the key, which meant they didn't want Elias. They wanted what Elias remembered, or worse, what Baxter knew. Twist, the dog, was the backup. Drive Elias turned to Baxter, his breath shallow. What? Did they put in you? He murmured. He grabbed the old USB tag that had always hung from Baxter's collar, one he'd assumed was just a dog ID chip. He plugged it into his laptop. A blinking prompt appeared. Neural sync interface detected. Decrypt memory log, Elias. Clicked yes, the screen exploded with video logs, maps, encrypted voice memos. He scrolled, stunned. It wasn't just surveillance, it was everything. Conversations with Jay, orders from the facility, test logs with Elias's brainwaves. Proof, all. Of it, Elias dragged the files into a secure drop. Upload progress 1%. 12%. Gunshots rang out. The garage door was being cut through. Baxter stood between Elias and the breach, tail stiff, body shaking. The door burst open. Masked men surged in. Elias hit. Send. 98%. 99%. 100%. He grabbed the laptop and smashed it. One of the masked men shouted, "Target is transmitting, stop him," but it was too late. Elias raised his hands. "You're done." One man aimed at him. Another lunged at Baxter. Elias closed his eyes, then a sudden snarl. Baxter pounced. He bit down on the attacker's arm, refusing to let go. A shot rang out. Baxter whimpered. Elias screamed, tackling the shooter. He fought wildly. Fists. Fury, desperation. By the time the sirens were audible, police and federal agents responding to the upload trace, it was over. The attackers scattered. Baxter lay on the floor, bleeding. Elias crawled to him. "No, no, no, don't do this. Don't you dare leave me again." Baxter looked at him with glassy eyes. His paw touched Elias's hand, a final wag of the tail, and then stillness. The document sparked a national firestorm. Senators resigned. The Sentinel Project was dismantled, in full view of the public. New laws were passed, Elias testified before the UN, but through it all he carried one collar, one name tag. Baxter became a legend. Statues were erected, schools named after him. Children learned about a dog who saved, a broken man, and an entire country's conscience. A gentle breeze swept across the field where Elias stood. It was Baxter's final resting place. A bronze statue rose above the grave. Baxter mid-run, ears up, tongue out, forever in motion. Elias knelt, set, a single flower down. "Rest easy, partner," he whispered. "You never stopped protecting me, even when I didn't know who I was." He stood, walked away, but paused once more, looking back. The wind stirred, and for just a moment, he swore he heard a bark. The cold night was behind them now. The city lights flickered in the distance like a broken promise, and yet in this moment there was a strange feeling of peace. For the first time in weeks, Michael could breathe without the constant weight of fear pressing on his chest. He stood on the steps of a rundown shelter, holding his canine partner's leash loosely, letting the dog rest at his side. "We made it, boy," he whispered softly, his voice cracking. The dog's brown eyes met his, steady and calm as always, as if understanding the enormity of the moment. It was as if they'd both crossed into a new world, one where for the first time in months there was hope, the promise of safety, the promise of a life beyond the cold street corners, the uncertainty of living without a roof, without a future. The shelter was barely more than a roof with four walls, but it was better than the alleyways they'd known. The bed they were offered wasn't much, but it would be theirs for the night. For Michael, that was enough. His hands trembled as he sat down, his head spinning with everything he had just survived, and his dog lay beside him, calm as ever, the only constant in this shattered world. For a brief, fleeting moment, everything seemed as though it would be okay. But something about it all felt off. Michael had been here before, promises of help, of redemption, of a second chance. He had believed them, only to have them ripped away when they least expected it. He knew better than to trust the world so easily. Not after everything he'd been through. Still, he let himself hold on to the idea for a moment. Maybe this time things would be different. Maybe this time there would be no more dark corners, no more searching for scraps of food in trash bins. He looked down at his dog, scratching behind its ears, the soothing motion giving him a sense of normalcy that he hadn't felt in far too long. The dog didn't seem to care where they were. It was loyal. It was patient. It trusted him completely, even when he wasn't sure he could trust himself. But the nagging feeling at the back of his mind wouldn't go away. Something was wrong. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was all too good to be true. The shelter wasn't perfect, but it was a start, a far cry from the streets. Still, as he lay down that night, the cold creeping through the cracks in the walls, a sense of unease washed over him. He glanced at the dog, whose eyes remained fixed on the door, ears perked as though waiting for something. Someone. Then it hit him. The shelter was far too quiet. There were no other residents, no voices, no footsteps in the halls, just him and his dog, and the strange silence that pressed in on him from all sides. Michael's heart started to race. He couldn't shake the sense that they were being watched, that they weren't safe, not in the way they thought they were. His instincts screamed at him to move, to leave, to run. His dog stood up abruptly, as though on cue, and moved toward the door. "Not again," Michael muttered, his hands trembling as he stood. He reached for the dog's collar, but it was too late. The door opened and a figure stepped in from the shadows. A man, tall and broad, his features hidden under the brim of a worn cap. Michael's heart sank as he recognized him from earlier, one of the government agents who had been investigating his case. But this wasn't just any agent. This man's eyes had an intensity to them, an unsettling familiarity that sent a chill down Michael's spine. "You're not supposed to be here." The man's voice was low, but there was no mistaking the threat behind it. Michael's breath caught in his throat. His dog growled, its hackles raised, sensing the danger. I thought this was safe," Michael stammered, his mind racing. "What do you want?" The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped closer, his gaze never leaving Michael's, as if weighing something in his mind. Then, without warning, he pulled something from his jacket, a small black folder. He held it up, letting it dangle in front of Michael's face. The letters on it were clear, marked with an official seal. "Government property," Michael read aloud in a whisper. His pulse racing. The man's lips curled into a faint smirk. "You think you've found peace, don't you? But we're just getting started." Michael's stomach twisted in knots. The shelter, the quiet, everything now felt like a setup. This wasn't the refuge he thought it was. This wasn't safety. It was the beginning of something far darker. The door slammed shut behind him. The cold, sterile walls of the shelter felt like a prison now, not a sanctuary. Michael sat on the narrow cot, his body slumped, his head buried in his hands. His dog lay quietly at his feet, as though sensing the overwhelming storm of emotions coursing through him. The peaceful illusion had shattered, and now he was left with nothing but the crushing weight of the truth. He had been lied to. He had been tricked into thinking this was a safe haven, when, in reality, it was just another cage. The man, the agent, had left, but the words lingered in the air like smoke. "We're just getting started." What did that even mean? What more could they possibly want from him? They had taken everything already. His career, his friends, his home, his dignity. And now they were pulling him back into the shadows he had been trying to escape for so long. His mind raced, spinning with possibilities. Who were they? What was their endgame? Michael's throat tightened. A sense of betrayal gnawed at him. He had tried so hard to leave the darkness behind. He had come so close to finding peace, to rebuilding something, even if it was just the tiniest shred of a future. And now it was slipping through his fingers, like water in his hands. He glanced down at his canine. The dog sat up, its sharp eyes never leaving him, its presence a constant source of comfort and loyalty. But Michael couldn't shake the feeling that even the dog, with its unwavering bond, couldn't save him from what was coming. A knock on the door broke his spiraling thoughts. He froze. His heart pounded in his chest. Who could it be now? The door creaked open, and a shadow filled the doorway. It was the same agent, the one who had shown up earlier, but this time there was no smirk on his face, no sense of satisfaction in his demeanor. There was only something darker, something urgent. Get. Up, the agent said, his voice low and cold. Michael didn't move. He couldn't. His mind was too far gone, lost in the labyrinth of fear, doubt, and anger. He couldn't think straight anymore. He just wanted to scream, to lash out, but he knew better. He had learned the hard way that fighting back only made things worse. I said, get up, the agent repeated, stepping into the room. The dog growled low in its throat, a clear warning. But Michael didn't respond. He couldn't bring himself to face what was happening. The man was here for something. The question was, what? The agent pulled something from his jacket, another folder, but this time there was no official seal. No comforting promise of help. Just something small, dark, and ominous. The agent slid it across the floor toward Michael. Look at it, the agent commanded. Michael's hands trembled as he reached for it, but the moment he touched the folder, a sickening weight settled over him. He knew this was bad. Slowly he flipped it open, and his breath caught in his throat. Inside was a picture, a photograph of his past, of his time in the military, his younger self, smiling in uniform, standing beside his K9 partner at the base. But the image wasn't the problem. It was the note scribbled on the back, "You owe us." The words hit Michael like a physical blow. The memories came flooding back. The war, the missions, the sacrifices, the things he had done, things he had tried to bury deep within himself. But they were all here now, out in the open. And there was no escaping them. The agent's voice cut through the haze. "You owe us, Michael, and you're not going anywhere until you pay the price." Michael's world crashed down around him. The last remnants of his hope crumbled into dust. He had been used every step of the way. The shelter wasn't his refuge, it was just another trap. They had been watching him all along, waiting for him to think he was safe, waiting for him to drop his guard. The agent took a step closer, his expression unreadable. "This is bigger than you think, bigger than anything you can run from. You can't hide and you can't fight it. You'll pay the price, eventually." Michael wanted to scream, wanted to fight back, but his body wouldn't respond. His mind was locked in a state of paralysis, and all he could do was stare at the photograph in his hands, the weight of the past pressing down on him. He was trapped. The agent turned, heading toward the door, leaving Michael with the crushing realization that he was truly alone. There would be no escape. There would be no easy way out. He was in the fight of his life, and this time there was no one coming to save him. The dog whimpered softly at his feet, and for a moment Michael felt something deep stir within him, a flicker of strength, a faint pulse of something that wasn't defeat, but it was a brief, fragile moment. The agent's words echoed in his mind. "You owe us." And for the first time in his life, Michael wasn't sure if he could repay that debt. The shelter felt suffocating now. The walls that had once seemed like a shield against the world now closed in on Michael. He had barely slept since the agent's visit, the image of the photograph, the haunting note, replaying in his mind like a broken record. He couldn't escape it. "You owe us." Those words twisted in his mind, gnawing at him, suffocating him with their weight. As the days dragged on, Michael's thoughts grew darker, more paranoid. He had seen the photo, but it didn't make sense. What was it they wanted from him? His military past, his loyalty to his K9, the unspoken bond they shared, it all seemed irrelevant now, like pieces of a puzzle that didn't fit. The agent's cryptic words replayed in his head, louder and more ominous with each passing hour. He tried to push it all out, tried to focus on his dog, on the only thing that had ever felt like a lifeline. But it was difficult. The dog, his constant companion, had become just as restless as he was. It could sense his anxiety, his inner turmoil. Its eyes watched him constantly, unwaveringly. It wasn't just a dog. It was his anchor, the only part of his past that still felt true. But even as the final rays of sunlight dimmed across the shelter's entrance, Michael stood in the doorway, his heart heavy, with an unbearable weight. His mind was still reeling. From the agent's last cryptic message, the unsolved mystery that had haunted him for days. He had come so close to understanding, to unraveling the truth. Yet now, everything was more confusing than ever. The photo, the note, the strange threats, they were all leading him in circles, but there was one thing Michael couldn't shake, the feeling that something far darker was at play. The dog, standing beside him, let out a low growl, its body tensed as it stared at the horizon, its ears pricked, alert. Michael followed its gaze, heart pounding in his chest. Out of the shadows a figure emerged, silent, almost ghostly in the fading light. It was the agent, or at least someone who looked like him. But this time, there was something different. Something wrong. The agent's face was twisted in a strange, almost unnatural grin. "You thought you were finished, didn't you?" The agent's voice came hollow and cold. Michael's breath caught in his throat. Before he could react, the figure reached into his coat and pulled out a familiar, weathered photo, the same one that had haunted him for days. But now the photo was different. The person in the photo was smiling, but beneath that smile something darker lurked, something that Michael had never noticed before. It was a recognition, a realization that shattered everything. The agent tossed the photo at Michael's feet, his grin widening. "You should have stayed away,"